They called me into the office at 4:58 p.m., 2 minutes before the end of my shift. No warning, no thanks, just a cold smile and a pink slip. I didn't know it then, but that moment would be the beginning of the end for all of them. I still remember the smell of that factory the day I walked in, oil, metal, and burnt rubber. Most people would turn up their noses at it. Not me. That smell meant something. It meant work. It meant stability. It meant I was finally going to be able to take care of my wife, Dana, and our newborn son without worrying if the lights would stay on. I gave that place everything. 15 years of sweat, busted knuckles, double shifts, and missed birthdays. I showed up early, stayed late, and never once complained when they needed someone to cover. I was proud of what I did. Not many people understand what it takes to keep a factory like that running. It's not just machines, it's people like me. Over the years, I watched new guys come and go. Some quit after a week, others got lazy, but I kept grinding. I trained half the guys on the floor. I knew the machines better than the engineers who designed them. When something broke, they called me. When deadlines were tight, I stayed back. I was the guy they could count on. At least I thought I was. That Thursday started like any other. Coffee in my thermos, steel-toe boots laced tight, lunch packed by Dana with a sticky note that read, "You got this." I clocked in, gave the foreman a nod, and got to work. Nothing seemed off until 4:58 p.m., 2 minutes before my shift ended. I was wiping grease off my hands when I saw Mr. Carson, the floor manager, motioning me over. He had this strange look on his face, tight lips, no eye contact. "Come with me," he said quietly. I followed him into the small office near the break room. Inside sat two people I'd never seen before. HR, apparently. They slid an envelope across the desk. No handshake, no thank you, just, "Your position has been terminated effective immediately." My ears rang. I barely heard the rest. Something about restructuring, budget cuts, severance. I just sat there, staring at the letter, my name printed neatly at the top like it belonged there. 15 years, gone in under 5 minutes. I didn't even ask why. I just walked out, heart pounding, my locker still full. I sat in my truck for nearly an hour after I left the parking lot. I didn't even start the engine. I just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, replaying everything in my head. The envelope was still in my lap. My name, Mark Lewis, looked strange now, like it belonged to someone else. I wasn't angry yet, not really. I was just numb. I kept thinking it had to be a mistake. Maybe someone higher up would call me, tell me there'd been some kind of mix-up. Maybe it was temporary, just a reshuffling. But the longer I sat there, the more real it became. No one called. The factory gate behind me stayed closed. When I finally pulled out, the sun had already dipped low. I drove home on autopilot. The roads I knew by heart felt unfamiliar now. Every red light felt like a spotlight, like everyone could somehow see the failure stamped on my face. I parked in the driveway and just sat there again, engine off, watching the living room light flicker behind the curtains. I could see Dana moving around, probably setting the table. Our youngest daughter, Emily, was bouncing on the couch like always. They didn't know yet. They had no idea the ground had just given out beneath us. I walked in trying to fake it, smiled, took off my boots, kissed Dana on the cheek. She gave me that look, the one she always did when something was off. "What's wrong?" It broke me. Right then, I couldn't hold it in. "I lost my job," I said, voice cracking more than I meant it to. "They let me go." She stared at me, stunned. What, why, after all these years? I shrugged. They didn't say much. Restructuring, I guess. She didn't cry. Dana's stronger than that. But her lips pressed into a hard line and her eyes darted toward the kids, making sure they didn't hear. That quiet pain, that was worse than yelling. Later that night, while the kids slept, we sat in silence on the porch. No words, just the sound of crickets and the soft creak of old wood under our chairs. For the first time in years, I felt completely disposable. The next morning felt heavier than usual. I woke up earlier than I needed to, even though I had nowhere to be. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the unpaid bills stacked in the corner, my coffee going cold in my hands. Dana was in the other room, getting the kids ready like nothing had changed. I think she was trying to protect them for as long as she could. But I knew I couldn't keep it quiet, not from Josh, our oldest. He was 15 now, sharp as a tack and always asking questions. He'd figure it out sooner or later. Sure enough, as he grabbed his backpack, he looked at me and said, "Aren't you late, Dad?" I forced a smile. "Not going in today." "Why?" Dana stepped in fast, trying to shift the moment. "Come on, Josh, you'll miss the bus." He hesitated, looked at both of us. I could tell he knew something wasn't right, but he didn't push. He just nodded and walked out the door. I watched him go, my chest tight. He looked so much like me at that age, except he still had hope in his eyes. That afternoon, I sat both kids down. Emily was too young to understand much, but Josh, he got it. "I lost my job," I said gently. "I'm not sure for how long, but I'm going to figure things out." Josh frowned. "But why would they fire you? You've been there forever." I didn't know how to answer. Sometimes people do things that don't make sense, but it's not your fault and we're going to be okay. He didn't say much after that, just nodded slowly and went to his room. I hated the way he looked at me like something solid in his life had just cracked. Emily hugged my leg and said, "It's okay, Daddy." That nearly broke me. Later that night, Dana and I sat down with the budget. We circled what we could cut: cable, takeout, my weekend beer, maybe even the car payment. We were already tight. Now we were choking. "I'll start looking tomorrow," I said, mostly to convince myself. "I'll find something." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "We're not going to let this break us." But deep down, I already felt broken. A week passed then, too. I applied everywhere: warehouses, delivery jobs, even a night shift at the local gas station. Nothing stuck. Every rejection stung a little more than the last. Apparently, being loyal to one company for 15 years makes you too specialized for everyone else. One afternoon, I was in line at the hardware store picking up some things for a small repair gig a neighbor had offered me. That's when I heard someone say my name. "Mark Lewis." I turned around and saw Kenny, one of the younger guys from the factory. He used to run the press 2 lines over from mine. We weren't exactly close, but we'd shared enough coffee breaks to be friendly. "Man, I heard what happened," he said, lowering his voice. "You okay?" I gave him a tired shrug. "Still standing, I guess." He looked around, then leaned in a little closer. "You're not the only one they're letting go, you know. They're doing it quiet, like 1 or 2 a week, mostly older guys, folks who have been there too long." My stomach turned. "Why?" "No idea," he said. "Management's being real cagey, but people are talking. Something's off, like they're cleaning house for a reason." That night I couldn't shake what Kenny said. I started texting a few other guys I used to work with. Some didn't answer. A few did, and their stories matched his. Sudden firings, no explanations, no real severance either, just canned lines about changes in direction or financial strategy. I even found out 2 guys from quality control, both with over a decade at the plant, had been escorted out last month. No goodbyes, no warning, just gone. And then I remembered something. About a month before they let me go, I'd walked in on Mr. Carson and 2 men in suits whispering in the break room. They stopped talking when I came in. Carson gave me this weird smile and told me to grab my coffee elsewhere. I didn't think much of it then. Now it felt like a puzzle piece sliding into place. Something was happening behind the scenes. And for the first time since I got fired, I felt something stronger than sadness. I felt the slow, rising burn of suspicion. Once the suspicion took root, it wouldn't let go. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The firings, the secrets, the way Carson avoided eye contact during my last few weeks. It all felt too neat, too clean, like someone had scrubbed the floor but forgot to hide the mop water. So I started digging. I spent hours on my old laptop at the kitchen table while Dana slept. I combed through company press releases, local news archives, even old union memos I'd saved over the years. Most of it was corporate fluff. But then I found a small article buried in a local business journal, published 3 months ago. Eastbrook Manufacturing to partner with overseas supplier to streamline production. It named our factory, my factory. According to the article, the parent company had signed a deal with a firm in Malaysia. The contract would save them millions in long-term labor costs. The report even mentioned a quiet restructuring plan. No details, just vague language about realigning local operations. It hit me like a punch to the gut. They weren't just firing people, they were replacing us, outsourcing. All that talk about tight margins and restructuring wasn't just an excuse. It was a lie designed to make us disappear quietly. I called Kenny and told him what I found. He swore under his breath, then told me he'd overheard something too. Something about clearing out long-term employees before announcing the change publicly. to avoid legal entanglements. That was their game. Get rid of the veterans first, the ones with retirement plans, health benefits, and experience. Then, when the dust settled, bring in a skeleton crew to finish the transition. No loyalty, just numbers on a spreadsheet. I sat in the dark that night, the glow of the laptop screen casting a pale light across the table. I wasn't just angry, I was insulted. 15 years and they thought I'd just roll over and vanish. They took my job, my pride. Now I wanted answers. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted justice. If they thought firing me would silence me, they underestimated the wrong man. I started making calls, not just to the guys still on the floor, but to the ones who'd been quietly let go just like me. Some hadn't spoken to anyone since they left. Most felt ashamed, like they'd done something wrong. I knew the feeling. But when I told them what I'd found, they all said the same thing. I knew something didn't feel right. I met with Frank in person. He worked the loading dock for 20 years before they showed him the door. We sat on his back porch with beers in hand, watching the sun sink behind the trees. They're clearing house, I told him. Replacements outsourcing hush money, you see it. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I just didn't want to believe it. Neither did I, but belief wasn't a requirement anymore. The evidence was piling up. Soon it wasn't just me and Frank. Kenny started passing word around quietly inside the factory. Guys who were still working but scared, they started sending me messages, hints, documents, photos of boardroom memos left accidentally on desks. I collected everything, names, dates, patterns. We weren't just a bunch of fired workers anymore. We were a team. We started meeting once a week at an old diner off the highway. Just a few of us at first, then 10, then 15. Men who'd kept that factory alive for years. Welders, machinists, line workers, electricians. We sat in cracked booths, drank bad coffee, and planned. There was power in that room, not just the kind that turns machines on, but the kind that turns tides. I'm tired of being quiet, Frank said one night. They tossed us out like broken parts, but we built that place. We kept it running. It's ours, whether they like it or not. Everyone nodded. We didn't have money. We didn't have titles or offices. But we had something stronger. We had the truth. And we were ready to use it. The truth was a good start, but it wasn't enough. If we wanted to make a difference, we needed to hit them where it hurt. Not with fists or fire, but with exposure, with pressure, with facts that couldn't be ignored. So we made a plan. I still had a few friends in local media, small-town reporters who knew me from back when the factory sponsored youth baseball or handed out turkeys at Thanksgiving. One of them, Lisa, owed me a favor. Years ago, I'd fixed her dad's truck engine for free when he got laid off. She remembered. "You've got documents?" she asked. "Dozens," I said. "Internal memos, layoffs timed with offshore deals, even a leaked email about phasing out legacy staff quietly. It's all there." She leaned back, eyes narrowed. "If what you're saying is true, this isn't just a story, it's a scandal." I nodded, and I want it public. She agreed to help. Her editor gave her the green light for a full investigative piece. Meanwhile, we kept organizing. Frank made a contact at the labor board. Kenny gathered names of still employed workers willing to speak anonymously. It was risky. If management caught wind, the remaining guys could be fired on the spot. But they were tired of waiting for the axe to fall, tired of pretending everything was fine while watching their coworkers vanish one by one. We gave Lisa a full timeline when the layoffs began, how they targeted the highest paid, the most experienced. We cross-referenced dates with the Malaysia contract announcement. It was all too clean, too calculated. While she worked on her story, we kept gathering steam. We planned a public meeting, rented out the American Legion Hall. Flyers went up around town. "What's happening at Eastbrook? Come find out." Simple, direct. We didn't know who would show up. Maybe no one. Maybe just a few angry ex-employees and their families. But we hoped the truth would pull people in. Because this wasn't just about jobs anymore. It was about dignity. It was about the people who gave everything and got nothing. And we were done staying quiet. The night of the meeting, I wasn't sure what to expect. My stomach churned with a mix of hope and dread. Would anyone show up? Would the community care? Or were we just a group of bitter ex-workers shouting into empty rooms? The American Legion Hall looked small and worn out. the kind of place where stories get told and secrets sometimes spill. Chairs creaked as people filtered in, men and women, some familiar faces from the factory floor, some neighbors who had heard whispers. Dana came too, with Emily and Josh in tow. She stood at the back, arms crossed but eyes full of support. I felt a surge of strength just seeing her there. Lisa arrived with her camera and notebook. She looked ready, like a soldier prepared to fight with words instead of weapons. When I stood up to speak, my voice shook. I told them everything, how we'd been fired without warning, the deal that sent our jobs overseas, the silence that followed. I showed the documents. I shared the stories. The room grew quiet, then restless, then angry. Someone yelled, "We need to do something." Another called for a petition. People exchanged phone numbers and ideas. It was no longer just a group of fired workers. It was a movement. Then the phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Kenny. "Mark, you need to get to the factory, now." We left the hall immediately, hearts pounding. When we arrived, the parking lot was nearly empty, save for a handful of security guards and a few trucks loaded with equipment. Rumors were swirling that the company was planning to shut down the factory ahead of schedule, before our story went public. They wanted to move fast, wipe the slate clean, and avoid bad press. I felt my blood boil. We were running out of time. But something inside me told me this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. We couldn't let them win. Not this time. The next morning, we gathered early by the factory gates. Word had spread fast. About 50 of us showed up, former workers, family members, even a few current employees willing to risk it all. We weren't just here to protest. We were here to take a stand. I looked around at their faces, faces worn by years of hard work and sudden betrayal. But now their eyes burned with something new, determination. We blocked the entrance. No trucks in, no equipment out, just a wall of people who refused to be erased. The news crews arrived, cameras rolling. Lisa was there, filming every moment, asking the hard questions the company tried to dodge. Our stories spilled out like wildfire, raw and real. Management tried to talk, tried to intimidate, but we were ready. We had the truth. We had each other. Hours turned into days. We held rallies, petitions, and meetings. Our small town started paying attention. Local officials stopped by, some expressing sympathy, others pressure. The story grew beyond our expectations. And then the unexpected happened. The company announced a halt to the shutdown plan, promising to review all options and work with the community. It wasn't a victory yet, not by a long shot, but it was a crack in the armor, a sign that we mattered. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. Maybe losing my job wasn't the end of the story. Maybe, just maybe, it was the start of something better. Months passed since we took a stand and the fight wasn't over, but something had changed inside me, inside all of us. The company's promised review led to talks with worker representatives, including some of us. The factory stayed open, though not at full capacity. Some jobs returned, but with new rules. It wasn't perfect and the road ahead looked rough, but it was ours again in a way. More than that, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: respect. For myself, for the people who stood beside me, and for the family who never stopped believing. Dana and the kids saw me differently now. I wasn't just a man who lost a job, I was a man who refused to give up. I started volunteering at the local community center, helping others who'd been laid off. I shared our story, hoping it might inspire someone else to fight, to stand tall when the world tries to knock you down. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on the porch and think about those early days, when the news hit and the fear felt endless. It still lingers sometimes, but it no longer controls me. We learned that losing something you love can break you, or it can build you anew. And as I watch Emily chase fireflies in the backyard or hear Josh's laughter from the next room, I know this isn't the end. It's just the beginning.